So, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Digital IT panel, Pandemic Readiness Lessons Across Digital Business, hosted by the Hofstra IT Association. We're very excited to have everyone here. I will be the moderator. My name is Melissa Moslino, and I am a business analytics student at Hofstra University. So, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Digital IT panel. So we also have the president of the Hofstra IT Association who organized this event, Valentina, who's also a master's student at Hofstra University in the business analytics program as well.
Thank you, Melis, for the introduction. I wanted to welcome everybody who took the time to attend our event tonight and thank the audience for attending our event and encourage them to participate during our panel by commenting or asking any questions on the live chat. Thank you to our panelists for taking the time and sharing the lessons learned during the COVID-19 pandemic with us. Thank you to the Hofstra IT Association members and the e-board for helping us plan the event. I have been very excited since the minute we started planning this event, and I'm looking forward for our great discussion.
Okay, so we have a great group of panelists who are digital IT experts in their respective companies, and they will be sharing their lessons and practices within their respective fields, which are e-commerce, cloud computing, security, and data. So our first panelist is Lee Bogner. He is a global e-commerce enterprise architect at Mars. We also have Pavan Wadaskar, who is a senior enterprise architecture leader at Mars. We have Carlos F. Lerma, who is the director of information security at Kraft Heinz. And we have Ken McNally, who is the senior enterprise account manager at Google. So we are going to just start off our conversation by each of the panelists providing a description of the area that they work in, as well as what led them to a career in that specific area, what their experience has been like, and just share their career trajectories and any other lessons with us. So I'm going to pass it over to our first panelist, Lee Bogner.
Thank you, Melis and Valentina. We're really honored to be here at Hofstra and the Zarb School, as well as to be part of the HITA organization, Hofstra IT Association, for this event. It's a very important topic, digital business lessons and readiness during the COVID pandemic, affecting all of us as well as everyone across the globe. In particular, to talk about digital IT and digital business impacts, which affects all of us in our daily lives and at home, but also through our business relationships. My area of specialty is e-commerce. I got into e-commerce in both product management and development close to 25 years ago, right at the dawn of e-commerce. Frankly, Ken's company wasn't even around back then, Google. Amazon only sold books, and websites and credit card online transactions were very rare. People didn't understand how that worked. I got into it from being a systems programmer working for IBM while I was in graduate school, getting my MBA. I went through a variety of different positions through product development, strategic management consulting, and then I ended up at an e-commerce startup in New York. So that kind of got my trajectory off the ground. I also ran a $100 million e-commerce business in my past. The last 8-10 years, I've been working with CPGs and consumer products, consumer packaged goods companies, and including Johnson & Johnson, Kimberly-Clark, and a number of other auto and luxury retail companies through Accenture before joining Mars about 5 years ago. Currently, I'm the global e-commerce enterprise architect. Let me just share a few things here. And as part of Mars, which is a very exciting company, it's been around for over 100 years. We operate in 80 countries, but we're very forward thinking. We're a privately held family-run business that's $35 billion, sixth generation. If you think about it, a company like that, most family-run businesses only last 1, 2, 3 generations at best. So Mars is on its sixth, soon to be seventh generation, and the sky's the limit. Keep planning ahead, we think, in terms of decades, in terms of our planning, not quarters. We have a very strong ethic, and with that, we have 5 principles: quality, responsibility, efficiency, freedom, and my favorite, mutuality, where everybody in the value chain is important. Customers, partners, consumers, and everyone around the world, which is why during these COVID times, the company really focuses on bringing our food products as well as our pet care products, and of course our world favorite candies and confectionaries out to the public, even within these difficult times of COVID-19. When you think about it, consumer companies and IT organizations have to be very attuned to what consumers are doing and how we can get our products to them. In particular, for e-commerce, which is based on online shopping, the products that we sell, as you can see here through reports around Forbes and Statista, show that during the pandemic, with all the behaviors changing and all the restrictions happening, very many products and back to basics were the focus of the last few months. So these are things that happened during the pandemic, and many of these behaviors will continue after the pandemic. Things like groceries, household supplies, food takeout, snacks, all the areas that we're in are very highly growth-oriented areas because the retail shops and chains had difficulty not only keeping up with demand and keeping products on shelves, but also had trouble with even having consumers have confidence to go to the stores. So online shopping, as you well know, became much more important in our daily lives. The use of internet and people avoiding stores was up 52% over on the right of this slide. The share of US adults who shopped more online is also up 52%. And of course, we all are familiar with restaurant delivery and curbside takeout as being exponentially growing at this time. So those categories are indicative of a lot of the behaviors, and they have impact on IT organizations. With the refocusing to the home, the idea of staples and packaged goods being more important and cutting back on luxuries and non-essentials are more trends. The ability to shift channels and get more value out of digital and online, both web and social shopping. So there's impacts around optimizing the e-commerce value chains and supply chains as people nest at home. E-commerce to many of us is normal, but to many, many others, it's the new normal. New terms have come into our lexicon. BOPIS, that's been around a little while, which is buy online and pick up in store. But it's even evolved in the during the pandemic to BOPAC, buy online and pick up at curbside. So if we look at all of these, on the bottom right, we see not only restaurant delivery, grocery delivery, all very much e-commerce, order online businesses with IT implications, as well as the BOPIS and BOPAC becoming more and more prevalent in terms of the supply chain, in particular in food and the delivery of these products. If we look at the e-commerce ecosystem, we see the full supply chain, or really a value chain of suppliers, manufacturers, distributors, retailers, and customers, all impacted by COVID. The IT implications are huge. Optimization, expansion of the businesses and the business models in IT areas such as demand planning, understanding how you get your products out to your customers, and be able to understand which markets are looking for which products. The ability to change your manufacturing through manufacturing agility is IT based. The ability to change your processes to create and produce new products in your manufacturing and have the systems and the information that will allow you to do that. Think of the example of changing from creating machines and engineering type products to ventilators, or changing your bottling plant to do hand sanitizer. These are all the types of things that are impacted and then have IT ramifications through systems of information and data that have to be adjusted, shifted, and maintained in order to be adaptable and be agile in these environments. Things like supply chain and inventory visibility to understand what consumers are demanding on a daily basis, both in your in-store systems as well as your online systems. And many of these, especially in the retail and the online, are being fostered by new IT systems and new distribution models and business models, such as new last mile delivery. There's an interesting example of, since Uber is not doing as much business in the typical ride sharing and taxi business, they're projected, Uber, to make over $1 billion this year in grocery delivery. So you look at the way a classic, modern, disruptive, IT mobile-based business with mapping technology is now shifting. Talk about agility, the ability to shift your business quickly and be able to ramp up to $1 billion business almost immediately during the pandemic. These are IT-based businesses. Additional things you see are contactless retail, the ability for business to business, where manufacturers are selling to retailers, can now be done instead of by having sales reps go to the retailer and look what's on the shelf. IT can help with computer vision and remote planogram, reviewing of stocks that are in the physical location, and to do order taking through a mobile app. In the Middle East and Southeast Asia, we have a number of channels where our manufacturers and distributors are working with the retailers and using tools such as WhatsApp, a communication tool that many of you use, to actually place orders. and do so with intelligence. So there's many things in the area of the e-commerce ecosystem and industry value chains, and a lot of them are impacted by technology. But don't be mistaken, every day they're impacted by people, processes, as well as systems. Some of the technologies we're going to talk about, including computer security and data analytics and cloud computing, will be covered by my colleagues on the rest of the panel today. I want to thank you for this opportunity to present and speak with you, and I will be available for questions as well as contact after the event to follow up with you. Melis, I think it's ready to go back to you.
Yes, so we can move on to our next panelist. Thank you so much, Lee. That was great. And your colleague Pavan, if he would like to go ahead and go through his slides.
Yep. Hello, everyone. This is Pavan Wadaskar. I'm first of all, thank you for having me here. Really honored to be speaking with you all today. I guess just a quick intro about myself. As far as what I do currently, I'm currently a senior enterprise architecture leader at Mars. As a part of that, certainly I look at overall end-to-end technology strategy within Mars as a global landscape. I guess a quick thought to add, how did I get here, is it does have to do with my background into computer science and engineering. And that's how I started my career in IT initially, almost close to 20 years back now. I initially started my career more as a programmer, and I spent good 7 to 8 years of my initial time doing core programming and so on. But eventually I did stumble upon the opportunity to work on the infrastructure side of things as well. And that's how I started working with Mars and explored that side of information technology as well, which in a sense kind of became complementary to the role that I'm currently doing, which requires you that end-to-end holistic understanding of information technology landscape. So that's how my career journey went. I guess going to quickly on the slides as far as what we are going to talk about, and I always love to talk about this one slide initially whenever we talk about cloud. Because cloud could mean a lot of things for a lot of people, and many people have different understanding of cloud depending on the context and business that you're looking at or the scenario that you're trying to address, right? So this does help to set the stage and baseline. This slide is, as you can see, it does appear too crowded, but believe me, it's going to help with end-to-end understanding of what actually cloud means. And that's why I kind of combine all these three areas together on one slide. As you could see on the left, what cloud mean in general is really, I mean, the way I like to think about cloud as just the pool of resources, right? Those could be any resources. And it has been around us. It's just been commercialized over last 15 years or so, right? People were using cloud even before then. It was more in the private form where companies were deploying virtualized servers and infrastructure within their premises, and they were using that. Essentially, you could term that as a cloud, right? Which in fact is considered as private cloud. Whereas what happened in about 97, 98 is where AWS or Amazon realized that whatever infrastructure they were using internally, which is essentially their private cloud, they realized they could make, they could monetize it, right? And that's how they launched AWS as services, right? And then they offered their own infrastructure to be consumed by external people on demand, right? And that became basically AWS, which is Amazon Web Services Cloud. Essentially, when we talk about cloud, we are talking about three categories of cloud, we could say. When any organization wants to adopt cloud, they can look at three different areas. One is the public cloud, second is hybrid, and third is private. And what it means is public cloud is something basically you are consuming resources from vendors like Amazon, Azure, Google, and private cloud is something that sits within your infrastructure. So if as an organization, if you already have a data center, you could potentially deploy the infrastructure and create your own private cloud. Certainly, I mean, each of these have nuances and how it would impact your overall strategy from infrastructure standpoint has those I mean, some of these could have drawbacks versus adopting public cloud and so on. And we'll look at those as we go on to the next slide and so on. But at a very, very high level, if you have to think about public cloud, it usually will offer low cost. It will, even though it says no maintenance, it doesn't mean that there is no maintenance at all. It's just being taken care by someone else for you, right? So if you use Azure Cloud, Microsoft is doing that back-end operations job for you, right? Near unlimited scalability, that just means that your resources are available for you on demand, and you can consume as many as you want because they have planned for that level of capacity. And then high reliability, right? And then comes the private cloud, which is more about flexibility for customizations because you pretty much are in control of everything that you deploy within your environment, right? So it does give you more control, more flexibility, and potential scalability compared to on-prem, which is basically then physical machines and data center we are talking about. And in between these two is the hybrid cloud, right? Which is more of a, it enables you to have that selective approach where you can choose which type of cloud you may want to deploy based on your needs and the application or project that you're working on demands, right? I think at a very high level, if I have to summarize, I would say one key point is the public cloud, you would see that is primarily and almost always is adopted by startup companies, right? Because they don't really have that legacy debt of technology landscape and so on, right? Whereas when the enterprises start adopting cloud, they would obviously use the hybrid approach most of the times because you still have this technical debt that you have built over years, right? And then you're slowly migrating to public cloud. So you can't just start from scratch, right? You have to take that gradual approach. So that's in a nutshell what public, private, and hybrid cloud means. What you're seeing on the right side, and at the top is basically the cloud management layers, right? So there you would see as to what exactly cloud means, right? Meaning on the left-hand side, you see these are the various layers that you can call, which are required for any application to function, in a sense, right? So any information technology application, when you deploy, it requires all those 7 layers to function, right? So starting with the network, storage, servers, virtualization, operating system, middleware, and so on, right? And what you're seeing on the right side is the different types of clouds that are available in the market, right? And how these different types of clouds, whether it is infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service, what does it mean to those layers that you're seeing as a columns, right? So when we say that you want to use infrastructure as a service, that means that pretty much the bottom 4 layer, which includes all your physical infrastructure, is being taken care by your vendor. Same thing with cloud platform as a service. All you maintain and manage there is application and data. And then when you talk about software as a service, the expectation is that all of those layers are taken care by your vendor. and you as a customer, you only use that application. I'll speed up a little bit because I realize that I'm eating a lot of time right now, and I'm still on just one slide. So quickly on the cloud operating model, I'd say how we govern the entire cloud, and this is agnostic of any specific vendor, right? Essentially, it comes down to 5 specific areas. Whenever we adopt cloud, we have to configure, secure, protect, monitor, and govern, right? And then there are details about what it means, but essentially those 5 key points will cover all the aspects of operational aspects of any cloud. Next slide, please. Thank you. So here, it specifically talks about what are the benefits that we get when we compare cloud versus on-prem, right? So essentially, benefits are scattered across these 7 areas: resiliency, scalability, performance, time to market, flexibility, security and compliance, and cost. And the color coding there indicates that whatever you see green, it's almost cloud has the clear advantage. When you adopt cloud, these are the 4 areas where you are going to gain efficiencies and benefits almost immediately. Whereas the cost, performance, and flexibility is something where it's subjective, right? So it depends on the workload that you're deploying to cloud. You may have an argument for on-prem versus cloud. On-prem may be better cost effective in some cases, like if some company already has a data center that it has to keep, then in that case, it may happen that for some of the applications, the data center based deployment may work better from cost standpoint versus cloud. What are the key challenges usually organizations face, right? When we adopt cloud, it's cloud sprawl is what is called as, which is basically uncontrolled growth on cloud, right? Because cloud makes it so easy for you to deploy pretty much any kind of resources that with a click of button, you pretty much deploy all your infrastructure, right? So it can really get out of hand pretty quickly. The other 2 key things I'll just call out, and I won't go through the entire list, is basically the security, which is based the concept of understanding the shared responsibility model that some organizations do struggle initially. So that needs to be very one needs to be very careful about in that space, because the missing control could mean that you're exposing potentially your landscape and data. And the other piece is certainly the lack of skilled resources. There is already an article from, I believe, Forrester, which does allude to that there is going to be a significant shortage of skilled cloud computing resources by 2025 or so. Because by that time, it does anticipate that most of the industry would have adopted the cloud model, right? Although certainly pandemic did accelerate that adoption, but it's still a little bit far away as far as closer to that 100% goes. Next slide, please.
So that also means job opportunity, right, Pavan?
Yeah, absolutely.
We literally have like 30 seconds.
Yep, I'll just quickly run down. I'll skip the last 2, the left side of it, because we already know what happened, or you can certainly spend some time on these slides even after. But it primarily just talks about what were the trends before pandemic and then what we have observed during pandemic. I guess the one key highlight that I would give for during pandemic is certainly the adoption of cloud have increased. Which was to the surprise, because initially pretty much the impression was that things are going to slow down, but it had the opposite effect. And then what we have seen as a trends for 2021 and beyond, right? So the very first is the cloud native applications, which is going to get accelerated quite rapidly. People are going to deploy more and more on native applications, which is serverless and all PaaS-based components. Another thing which has changed significantly is how people look at security, right? I'm sure my colleague there, Carlos, is going to talk more about security, and I'm sure he will cover a lot. But security, the identity as a new parameter from security standpoint. So that's certainly to look for, and even from jobs standpoint, security is going to be the key area going forward. And then one more thing I would like to call out is the distributed cloud, which is basically about the rise of edge computing, I would like to call it, which is all to do with the IoT edge cloud, multi-cloud, and with the 5G launched now. It's going to it's going to basically present a lot of unforeseen opportunities in terms of how it's going to all evolve. So that's certainly going to be area to watch for. With that, my apologies for taking over 5 minutes, but thank you so much, and I'll hand it off to you, Melissa.
Thank you, Pavan. Lots of opportunity in the area of cloud and lots of acceleration. Carlos Lerma, Director of Information Security at Kraft Heinz. Welcome, Carlos.
Lee, my friend, thank you very much for the opportunity. I think it's great to be out here with all of you, and we got some goodies to talk about with you guys. So I don't have any slides. I think I'm going to ad-lib it more for you guys and be a little bit more creative in terms of the things that I want to talk about and the answers that I want to give you. So what led to my career in information security? Well, that was very simple. When I was about 10 years old, back in 1990, I saw a movie called War Games with a very young Matthew Broderick that talked about how the United States was actually conducting cyber warfare in a very futuristic setting. That was pretty much the one time when I got excited about all that stuff. But then, as I was about to graduate high school in 1995, must have been a couple months before what we call the prom in Mexico. I'm actually from Mexico. I saw a movie called Sneakers with Robert Redford and Sidney Poitier and who else was out there? Dan Aykroyd. And that was actually the movie that got me into thinking that security could be the coolest thing in the world. And this is way back when internet was pretty much on dial-up modems and we depended on the phone system to actually get online. So after that, I did a whole bunch of other stuff. I mean, I'm actually an accountant by trade. So I started doing operations in a university back in Mexico. I used to be a server engineer. And then from then, I started doing other things, network engineering. I started teaching courses in computer security, computer networking. And one thing led to another one. And I'm right here talking to you guys as director for information security for Kraft Heinz. You guys might know us. Might love if you're in college, you might be very familiar with our products, especially mac and cheese, and other goodies like Oscar Mayer, Cold Cuts, Planters Peanuts, and some other very iconic brands like what's called HP sauce and Heinz beans were very representative of the United Kingdom culture. So that was pretty much how I got to information security. And by saying that, I do want to stress the point that security is a very dynamic field and security is full of opportunities. So what does that mean to you guys? That if you actually have the will and you think security is a cool field that you want to work on, well, guess what? We need more people. We need more firepower. And security is definitely one field that allows us to get insights from all sorts of people, from all sorts of walks of life. You don't have to be, computer scientist, or you don't have to be like management information systems. I've known people in security pretty much come from a music background or what's called molecular biology background. There's all sorts of stuff, because why? We need people that think differently and even look differently and talk differently and do things differently. That's exactly what we look in this field. It's a very rich field, especially if you can proverbially think out of the box. Perfect. We want you here. So, but since you guys are in business, so what is information security? Why is information security such an important topic for information systems managers, and not just for information systems managers? Think about CEOs, think about CFOs, think about COOs. Why do we want to convey the message of security, not just for information security, for information systems managers, but the guys that have, the big money in their hands? Well, specifically because computers are here to stay for until pretty much the end of times. All business is conducted online. Most of communication is conducted online. most of these things, most business systems rely on computers to live. And whoever is not pretty much adopting that mindset is dead. Just like that. It's old news. It's pretty much in the past. So because of the fact that information systems are full of vulnerabilities by design, because that's pretty much the way that software is coded and software pretty much behaves, this is pretty much the one thing that we have to convey to business managers. The fact that there are vulnerabilities, the fact that there is information that is hosted in key parts of the enterprise that needs to be subjected to evaluations of criticality, of importance to the business. And based on that importance and criticality, there are security controls that need to be assessed so that we can assure that information is secure or is nearly secure. Now, if you look at the reason why those controls are there, the first one is because most people have to comply with something. Most people have to comply with a law or a rule or a business rule that says that there has to be security in there in order for us to do business. There are other fields like healthcare or manufacturing that have very specific mandates about the information that they handle. If you're in healthcare, you pretty much live and die by personal health information, which is all the information that is not just intended to identify yourself, but also contains any ailment or any condition that you might have in your specific medical history. And for manufacturing, well, it controls many things. It controls hazardous substances. It controls specific products that are bound to be liable by law in terms of the final product, like pharma, or when it comes to food services. Stuff like that is bound by very, very stringent laws that have a component that has to do with information security. Maybe 5-10 years ago, only certain places like the US and the EU would have those things in place. Guess what? Now everybody's coming up with a security mandate or a security directive. Mexico has it, Brazil has it, Indonesia has it. I think the India is very, very stringent when it comes to that. Russia is extremely harsh when it comes to that, to the point where data has to be there. If you run a query on a system that contains information that is hosted within Russia, the results of the query have to stay there by law. So as you can see, it gets complicated, more complicated by the minute, by the hour. Now, important question, and this is really, really cool to think about. Where's the enterprise spending time and money on information security? This depends on what type of company you are, in which field you are. So like I said, if you are in the financial services pretty much live and die by two things: by availability and by the confidentiality or personal identifiable information. So we know that financial institutions usually take that as their core areas of security. Healthcare, let's not even talk about that. If it's PHI, they will spend most of that stuff or most of their effort in there. But if you're in CPG or you're in manufacturing, you live and die by, if you're in manufacturing, you live and die by uptime. So security has to be directed at assuring that systems are fail-safe, that hacks can actually be contained and can be, let's say, absorbed by the infrastructure and still provide availability of the resources to churn out whatever it is that we're making. And when it comes to CPG, CPG not only has a manufacturing component, which we just talked about, it also has a component of e-commerce, e-business, and as you can see from the pandemic, you gotta leverage, the web, and you gotta leverage online systems to sell your stuff, to actually do business. And this holds true from a mom and pop coffee shop all the way to a company like Mars or a company like Kraft Heinz. So as you can see, it depends on where you are, depends the type of risk that you should be planning for, and the spending that you're gonna exert in order to facilitate that remediation of those risks. Now, what other lessons did we learn during the pandemic? And I've only got a couple more minutes.
Yeah, 2 minutes.
What lessons did we learn during the pandemic? First of all, that you have to plan for the worst. And we used to say, well, do I need disaster recovery? Yes, you do it. I don't have a disaster. I haven't had one in the last 15 years. Well, guess what? We just had one. And if it can, just like Murphy's Law, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. So you have to plan for that. But also the fact that security is not optional. If you're, let's say, you're working from home and you got a company in which you have to provision 5,000 users to work from home through a VPN, the VPN has to be there. There has to be encryption for that data. Most companies said, well, okay, I'm sending my workforce home. I need to enable them with document sharing services and with data that they can run queries on from the comfort of their home because they can't go to the office. Well, guess what? There needs to be data classification. There needs to be risk management in terms of that data classification. We need to have security controls that secure that data, so when people are accessing that from home, we ensure that those documents and that data is not going to be exfiltrated. So as you can see, the pandemic pretty much put us thinking about problems that were supposed to be, 15 years into the future. But once again, and this is what I want to leave you guys with. You guys are going to be solving problems that we're not even trained even to think about. You guys have a very, let's say, a fertile mind when it comes to thinking about problems that humans are going to be facing in the next 15, 20 years. And security is, once again, it's a very dynamic field. It requires individuals to have forward thinking, creative thinking, but most important, thinking and a mindset that allow them to understand the future. So that's pretty much where we are holding at when it comes out to security. Lee, all yours.
Thank you so much, Carlos. I really love the idea that big or small, security is not optional, and the fact that security is another fertile ground for a career opportunity. Next, I'd like to invite, frankly, a new friend and colleague who's helping Mars in many, many ways with technologies and innovation. And you're familiar with his company, Google, Ken McNally. And Google is much, much more than a search engine. Ken, take it away, please.
Great, thank you, Lee. I appreciate it. And thank you very much to the folks at Hofstra and the Hofstra IT Association, and Valentina and Melis. Thank you very much for your time and efforts today for this. Specifically, I work for Google Cloud. Google Cloud is a subsidiary of the parent company Alphabet. I'm out of the DC area. Google specifically offers the ability for customers to use our infrastructure as a service, the platform as a service, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all on a consumption-based model. So you can pay for it at will. You can turn it off. You can turn it on when you want to. That's a little bit about Google Cloud in general. How I got started in the industry is pretty funny. It's kind of like Carlos. I graduated with a degree in sociology, which is obviously a natural fit in the cloud. But I was a product manager for a dental HMO in Atlanta back in the day, and I got a call from a friend of mine I went to college with who said, "Hey, do you want to sell technology? Do you want to double your salary?" And I said, "Sure." So I started with UUNet in the late '90s, selling dedicated bandwidth across the globe. And then I graduated into software sales. I worked for CA Technologies, and then I started working for HP, Hewlett Packard. And then the move for cloud was pretty interesting. One of my largest accounts was Capital One. Capital One was heavily invested into Hewlett Packard, into our software. They had it in every source, in every company they owned. And one day they called us into the office and they said, we need to have a strategy in place within the next 12 months for all of your software to be used within the cloud. And I said, okay, why? Where are you going? And they said, well, we're developing a relationship with AWS. And I said, okay, this is crazy. Nobody's gonna allow a global banking company into the cloud. And sure enough, they did. And so within probably 4 months after that, I left and started working for AWS, because if Capital One could make that leap, I thought anybody could do it, and I'd be at the ground level of something really, really big. And I was, and it's been fantastic ever since. But why the move to Google Cloud specifically? They are much more of a partner-friendly, open source organization that has a much, much bigger conscience than some of the other organizations I've worked for. Plus, there's the ability to tie into the global ecosystem and the Google ecosystem, which includes companies like YouTube, Waymo, G Suite, DeepMind, Google Search, Google Maps, etc. So, that added to the opportunity to work for a younger cloud organization really was kind of a no-brainer to me. So that's a little bit of a background on where I came and where I got started from. From lessons learned from the pandemic, I think personally from a sales perspective, it affected us a lot. A lot of the in-person meetings, or 100% of the in-person meetings, were canceled. But we were fortunate enough to work for a company like Google that has G Suite, that has the collaboration tools to allow us to not miss a beat and really just change the meetings from in-person to virtual. So it's been relatively easy. I'm not going to say that for all of our people, because a lot of people have little kids at home. It's very, very hard for them to work. They live in different places where they don't have a lot of room for video conferencing. So I'm not going to take anything away from those folks. Those folks have it very, very tough. For Google Cloud as a company, we had a lot of interruptions. Specifically, one of our biggest events of the year is Google Next. We were all set to have about 30,000 people join us in Vegas to help expand the Google platform, to learn more about the products and services, and we switched that 100% to virtual. We had about a 9-week course set up for our customers, and we had about 75,000 people attend. So it actually worked out in our favor. We went from 30,000 attendees to about 75,000 attendees, and we made it all virtual, and we made it free of charge. So that was a big lesson, and I think we're going to continue that this year. As far as a product perspective goes, from the Google Cloud area, we've had a lot of people to use data visualization. Data visualization for a lot of healthcare companies is huge in terms of trying to pinpoint the next area that the virus is affecting, trying to contain it, trying to identify the sources where it has come from, where it's going to. And we're using geolocation with Google Maps to help healthcare organizations and educational organizations try and get a better understanding of where it's coming and where it's going. From a personal perspective, my customers, we've seen a lot of customers in the past, they may have missed the boat in terms of being able to sell directly to the consumer. A lot of my customers have products and services that are sold through retailers, and they don't have a real handle on the data coming directly from the consumer, who they are, where they live, how they buy. A lot of that information they've had in the past, and they've had to aggregate that, normalize that data, and then spit it back out to the business so that they can take action on it. That is, it can't be emphasized enough that the source of data and the data itself is kind of the new black gold in the 2000s and beyond. As far as lessons learned, from a company and personal perspective, and you've got to ensure you've got multiple avenues of revenue. Customers hit the hardest by this, weren't able to take advantage of multiple revenue avenues because they were single streamed. You've got to be prepared to pivot with different strategies and have strategies ready to implement. I think, like Carlos says, you've got to think about the worst and think that it could happen tomorrow and be prepared for it. You've got to have collaboration tools. I can't emphasize that enough. If you don't have access to an account where you can get in touch with your employees, or your employees can get in touch with you, you're going to miss the boat. You've got to take advantage of the data that's within your grasp and be ready to analyze and act on it. And then I think lastly, you've got to be ready to embrace change. Companies that weren't able to embrace change, I think, missed the boat and are struggling at this point. Those that were able to pivot and maybe move into a different area, obviously not everyone is going to be able to do that, but those that are able to do it and those that have the resources to do it have been able to take advantage of this and been able to come out on top. That's it from my perspective. I'm happy to take questions when the time is ready, Lee.
Thank you so much, Ken. Very, very enlightening. Really understanding how Google as an organization and your organization and Google Cloud, and working with your customers, we're able to adapt and perform. Key insights on multi revenue streams is so important, and the ability to seize on opportunities, even in the most difficult times. Thank you very much. At this point, where do we want to go next?
Yeah, so again, thank you to all the panelists. That was great and really insightful information. We want to open the floor. We have about 7 minutes left, so we want to open the floor if the audience has any questions or any questions from YouTube. Valentina, if you received any, if anyone wants to engage, then we can open the floor for questions. And if not, we also do have a list of questions prepared by the HITA members. So maybe just wait a couple more seconds to see if the audience has any questions. If not, I can ask a couple that we have saved. We do have one question from Abash. How does one handle cyber risks coming from vendors and other third parties?
Great question. That's an awesome question. And that's pretty much, they hit it right in the head. That's one of the main risks that we have right now. How do you handle that? Well, through a third-party risk management practice. And what's that pretty much mean? It means that you have to have, let's say, a combination of a team that can help you understand what the risks are that you can possibly start engaging in when you buy another company or that you're doing business with another company. Usually, it's a team comprises a multidisciplinary team. You're going to have at least a technologist, a risk management expert, and usually a lawyer or someone that can go through contracts. That's the type of people that can help you with that. What are they going to assess? What are they going to go for? Number one, that the business, let's say business terms that let's say the business relationship that you have with them is clearly defined in terms of the services that you're buying from them, or the services that you're consuming from, that you're providing to them, they're your client. That's one. The other one is that they have a set of security controls in place so that that business relationship can be secure over a given period of time, which is in this case, the length of the contract. And number three, that any sort of contract that is signed by both parties has certain provisions for security that are clearly outlined in that document. And for that, that's actually the best, let's say the most interesting part of the whole team. You'll need a lawyer or someone with very good understanding of contract drafting that can help you understand exactly what those lines are. Once that is locked in, if you can actually have someone to understand what the terms of the technology are going to be given to you, so that when you consume them, the size of your company or the needs of your company can be actually met by that provider. Let's say if someone is giving you cloud, let's take cloud services, which is the perfect example, and can actually go through this stuff with you guys. If I am, let's say I'm a big customer, let's say that I'm a big automotive company, right? And I need cloud services from Ken. One of the first things that they're going to do is Ken is going to give me a contract, and my risk management division or my third-party risk control, those guys are actually going to go through the entire contract and all the technology components, all the legal components, all the contractual components. And if there is something in there that I don't feel that is right, or that it's going the way that I want it to go, then Ken and I are actually going to get into that bargaining so we can cross the T's and dot the I's. And then I think the last part would be I'm actually going to assess if Ken's company can give me that service that I'm asking for at 100% capacity. And that's pretty much how that works. Hopefully that question was well answered by me.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Abash, for that question. That was very insightful. And we also have another question from YouTube, actually. So the question is, any recommendation for a healthcare professional who has his own practice to improve your business digitally. So some practical advice if anyone wants to shed light on that.
So I could take a shot at that. To improve your practice digitally, there's a tremendous amount of digital tools and technologies. I'm not sure, what type of practice you're in, but I'm presuming you're doing patient care. Many applications that have direct information, highly secured for HIPAA and the like, such as MyChart, are available that are just amazing in terms of the information that can be made available to patients in a very timely manner, plus have direct conversations with their direct physicians and not have to wait every 3 months, 6 months, or a year. To be able to track prescriptions, to be able to get almost immediate testing results from a variety of levels within a very quick amount of time for the the patients that are willing and able to use these mobile apps. They're so easy to use. That would be one recommendation. The other recommendation is to become more keenly aware of the different types of devices that are medical devices, and the fact of that important data that you can use through IoT. You've heard a bit about that from multiple speakers today. Internet of Things that are monitoring and tracking information. At Mars, we have what's known as Whistle, a Fitbit for dogs that manage for our pet care business. We're the world's largest pet care company. And in addition to pet food and veterinary work and clinics that we have, we track the vitals and all the information through IoT sensors that the puppy or the adult dog wears, and we have that information go directly back to their primary veterinarian. Think about that in the human patient world. The whole world of IoT, you've probably heard about it, Internet of Things. That's everything from a sensor that I just described to a sensor that can monitor what's in your refrigerator and send an order to Amazon. The big area that's up and coming is IMOT, Internet of Medical Things, or IOMT actually. So I would begin to understand digital technologies like those, as Carlos and Ken and Pavan mentioned, because these are all the waves of the future going 10, 15, 20 years out.
And let me add something to that. I actually add three things. One is you need to know where your data is stored, like where your crown jewels are stored inside of your network. The other one, because you need to plan for security countermeasures for that stuff. The number two is you need to be very aware of the regulations that you have to comply with, national, state, provincial, county, whatever it is. You need to know them really, really well. The third one that I was actually going to tell you is you need to start thinking about risk in terms of what is the volume of operations that you handle and where your data is. That pretty much is going to help you understand how much money you need to, from a security perspective, how much money you need to spend and where you need to put it. And this holds true from the smaller shop to a hospital. I can tell you that because disaster recovery right now is really important. And the best one for small firms that do healthcare is as simple as backups. If you don't even have a backup solution, you're dead on the water. Why? Because ransomware is pretty much the one thing that's attacking everyone right now. And ransomware is super popular when it comes to health environments. So if you could actually go on through those three things, definitely keep an eye on them.
One more quick thing. Think about not only the backups, but the use of what Pavan and Ken were talking about, using cloud environments. Obviously, your data has to be protected, especially for medical patient information. Hopefully
Thank
that was some answers that you can see as useful.
I think there's another one down there. Let me. I just saw it. Do one prefer good data or good models?
Yeah.
Pavan, I think that's for you, my friend.
I can probably quickly chime in. Yeah, I guess we are a little bit over time, but I think unfortunately, it's not the either or proposition. It has to be both good to gain the best results, right? Or I should say more reliable results, right? But if it's a question with gun to the head, then I would say good model is what I may go with. But you would need, obviously, good model needs good data to produce reliable results.
Yeah, that's a
Great
very
answer.
interesting question. Yeah, and great answer. Thank you so much for everyone who asked a question, and thank you to our panelists.
I think there's one more over
Oh,
there. If
there's
you
one
actually
more.
want to go
Yes,
over it, yeah.
yes, I just got it. Where education stands to prepare new generations for IT, it seems there is a big gap. So
Yeah.
yes, where does
Yeah.
education stand to prepare them?
I think there is a big gap. I think that more people are going to, the AWSs, the Google Clouds, and the Azures of the world for their business needs. And I think there is a big gap. I think Google is doing a great job educating the veterans, educating the folks right out of college. We have a great program that is for women in IT. There, AWS also has a lot of educational facilities and opportunities. I would take advantage of those. A lot of those are no charge. And they'll prepare you specifically to work with cloud providers and business in general. Don't forget about the fact that you're working for either it's a Google or AWS or Azure, but it's still preparing you for working with business in general. So don't look past those free opportunities to work with cloud providers, whether it be us or whether it be for one of the other cloud providers. Look for those free things, and I can send those to the folks at Hofstra as well.
Yeah, I would also, thanks, Ken. I would also add, you did end up mentioning Microsoft in that list, in addition to AWS and of course Google Cloud Platform, but also IBM and other large companies. There's a dearth of talent. So I think the answer is learn as much as you can within college, but also as Carlos and Ken attested to, you don't necessarily need a background in full IT to get involved in these areas. You have to be smart. You have to be critical thinkers. You have to be creative as well as analytical. Plenty of opportunities.
Yes.
There's another one, if I may, and I really want to address one. This is from Brett Weiler to the group.
Yes.
What does this help you get to where you are? What advice would you have for others who want to set up in a similar direction? I'll give you the same advice that the leader for the Chicago SWAT squad for the FBI gave me last year. This is actually great. Number one, you need to be able to process very large amounts of information. If you can actually do that naturally, you're set to go. Second, you got to be able to work your butt off, really. And I can't stress this enough. You got to be able to work until you get home and you're beaten up. You're pretty much ready to do that the next day. The third one, which is very important, good attitude. And it doesn't just mean that you have a winning attitude. It also means that you have a culture of sharing information, which is very, very important. Number two, that you help others grow, because you're not doing that, you're not doing anything right. And number three, that you're able to collaborate with others to get to a big objective. If I actually have to give you some advice, that is the one thing that sets apart the people that I want to work with and people that I don't want to work with.
All good advice from all the panelists. Really, really good. Thank you.
Yes, if anyone has, I know we're running out of time. If anyone has any last points or last words, if any of the panelists do, if not.
I think there was a gentleman that wanted to ask a question. Abbas Shakir?
Abbas. He said, what are the most essential things that must be followed before going for cloud computing platform?
I would say Pavan, you can take that one. I can take it, but I would answer it very easily. But Pavan, you could probably take that one.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, what are the most essential things that must be followed before going to cloud computing platform? Is that question more from the perspective of business trying to adapt the cloud computing, or is it more from skills you're trying to develop?
I was thinking business, but you're right. Yeah, it could be either way.
Why don't you give 30 seconds to address both?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay, there it is. It's both.
All right, perfect. I guess if you're starting from scratch from skills standpoint, I would say it's easier to adopt new concepts directly in cloud. Let's say if you don't have any background into legacy infrastructure, how things used to be done, and so on, it would be easier for you to directly dive into cloud computing concepts and so on, and learn those straight in the new world. Because people sometimes do struggle with trying to comparing the new world with the old world and so on, and it doesn't always match up, right? So it creates more confusion in people's minds. I would say if you're starting plain, starting fresh on cloud computing, start plain. I guess from the organization standpoint, if you're trying to adopt cloud, there are, I think I shared in the earlier slide, there are those 7 areas which are taken into consideration primarily, and which you can call out as the drivers for anybody to adopt cloud, right? And those goes around, and I would just highlight just 2 specific ones that I like the most, and I think for most people that those are the drivers. One is the cost, the other one is the really the scalability, where you don't need to plan your infrastructure within your data center much in advance and then spend a lot of money in advance, whereas you can just consume it on demand. I would leave it with that, but Ken, if you want to add something, please go ahead.
From a entry level into cloud computing, depends on if you're technical or not. I don't want to assume anything, but certifications are always good. The education to get those certification is, I believe, mostly free out there. So to take advantage of those from GitHub and others. We look at certification, we look at background, we look at attitude, like Carlos was saying, and we look at your ability and your diversity as well. So, don't be afraid to reach out, to anyone within the organization, any organization that you're going into for advice. Don't be afraid to do an internship if you have to for a couple of months. But, to get those certifications really proves to us as an organization that you're all in and that you want to use cloud and that you're excited about it.
That's great advice. Thank you for everyone for asking the questions. Thank you to our panelists. If we do have additional questions, anyone in the audience can reach out to us and we can forward them to our panelists or connect you with them. But we are over time. So I just wanted to say thank you so much to each and every one of our panelists for taking the time today, for providing so much insight on your experiences, for engaging with the audience, and just just talking about very helpful stuff. I know our audience is definitely very engaged and found a lot of what you said very useful. So I just wanted to say thank you. And we also want to thank everyone in the HITA Club. We also want to thank everyone else who attended, who was engaged. I know we have some people in the group here and an audience in YouTube. So thank you for everyone for tuning in and for engaging. We hope that everyone gained some valuable insight. I know I did. So thank you again, everyone who joined.
Thank you, Melis and Valentina. It was wonderful.
Thank
really,
you so
really
much.
great.
Thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.